All right, welcome everyone. Hope you're having a great Saturday night. Let's get right into the stream. I want to first off thank our CannaBuzz Premium supporters and our associate producers. Those folks, their names on the screen are our supporting subscribers. So huge thanks to everyone on the screen for their support, their monthly support. We really appreciate it. And now back onto the stream. I'm joined today by the Weed Wizard. We've got Weed Wizard. He's over on the left-hand side of the screen over there. And then I'm also joined by JR Token right below me. He's wearing his CannaBuzz gear. I love it. He's wearing the hat and the shirt. Welcome, everyone. I'm Q Grows. I forgot to even introduce myself as well. So I'm Q Grows. We got JR Token right below me. We got Weed Wizard. He's the person in the hot seat. And we will be hanging out here for a quick Saturday night Cannabis Sessions live. And once again, huge thanks to all of our supporters for supporting us. Please use code 420summer at checkout and become a CannaBuzz Premium member today for $4.20 a month for your first 3 months. We'd really appreciate it. Checking out the chat, we've got people joining in the chat, so that's great. We've got Kells joined, Dr. Strains, Old Soul Stoner, Dane's Tokes. So we're starting to see everyone, starting to see people roll in. So yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for joining me tonight.
No problem. Excited to be here.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
So for those that aren't familiar, if you're just kind of new to this place or whatever, maybe you come across this video in the future and you're like, what? The Weed Wizard? Who is that? So we're going to get to the bottom of that tonight. But first, I was going to give you a little bit of an introduction. So Steve, or the Weed Wizard, you've been on Discord. You've been on CannaBuzz now for at least a couple of years, probably, right?
And a year and a half. It was the December 2020 push.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That early December 2020 when there was just a huge influx.
Right.
Like that first week of December, yeah.
And you've been doing morning metal streams now for a while. Is it for a bulk of that same amount of time, or is it?
Yeah, morning metal started within the first week or so of discovering CannaBuzz, because I discovered CannaBuzz and it was like, wait, I can shoot videos of me doing dabs and no one gives a shit, right. and so it really corresponded with this deep dive into metal music that I was already in before CannaBuzz. Like, folks know my love affair with Iron Maiden, but it only started a few months before I joined CannaBuzz, and it was this band that's always been around my whole life. And then one day I just sat and listened to it, and it just blew my fucking mind. And then I just started going on this deep dive into all of these other bands and building this playlist up, and just sitting, like, I'd play a video game and listen to music and just add to a playlist and just add and add and add. And so then within that first week or two of joining CannaBuzz, it was like, well, I'm going to make a little video of me doing a dab to a song. And it was always just like a 10-15 second clip at first. It was just, hey, here's a metal song that I'm listening to this morning. And I had this whole morning routine. If I come downstairs, I put on my metal music, that metal playlist I was building, I make breakfast for my wife and me, and then I take my dabs. And so for a while, it was those little short videos of morning metal, and folks would just comment. And this was also, again, like, kind of early CannaBuzz. I think CannaBuzz was only like a year and a half old at the time. And there were every few weeks there was some other problem with loading a video. And there was this one day that I just couldn't get anything to load, and I got really frustrated. And I was like, well, fuck it, I'll just go live. And so I went live and started doing morning metal live that way. And again, it started off for just like I would do a song and then I'd turn it off and finish my dabs. And then that turned into, why am I turning it off? I'm just sitting here doing dabs. So like, I'm just going to chill. And as that happened and more people just started, coming and hanging out in the mornings, um, especially in the old days where I actually had to have my laptop on one side and my phone in the other because I had to refresh every couple seconds to see who was commenting on the live so that I
Yeah.
could back with them. Which what's really funny is that when it switched to the new format, which is a much better and much more interactive format, it also dropped the trend on the on the live because it wasn't all of the comments. But
Oh
not
yeah.
that that really matters because what ended up happening is that now people have come in later and they watch it throughout the day. Like the number of times that people are like, "Oh, hey, yeah, I never get to like join you, but I listen to this throughout the day," and like, "Oh yeah, this is like a half hour of great music that I get to enjoy every day."
Yeah.
So it's so yeah, and so that's kind of where morning metal is today. Is just we have this hangout, and it's you know a lot of the folks that we're seeing on here, and then some of the folks that are that it, and then folks will just pop in, say hi. Folks that I don't know, I still keep the laptop open and next to me, and I'll often join the chat so that I can see new people who are coming in. Because when somebody I've never seen before pops in, I go right to their profile and check them out and see if like you know who is this person. I have I have a very quick vetting process I do. I look at a profile and I go to the about page. And if there's anything in there saying that they're going to try to sell me meth or cocaine, or if there's some kind of like DM me on Snapchat for drugs thing, nah. and then if it's and then if it's like I'm looking for a hookup and a relationship with a nice man, it's like nah, I know what you're after. But
That's why you've never responded to my direct message. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. We've got a bunch of people that have been joining. We've got Nelson. Kel says that she loves the stream. Let's see. Dr. Strains, I don't know if he was throwing out a request or if it was just a shout out, but it was to Wrathchild by
Wrathchild,
Iron Maiden. Yeah.
I will definitely play more Wrathchild. It has shown up on many a Maiden Monday. One of my, you know, it's a phenomenal song off of their second album. It really is one of the songs that solidified my love for Iron Maiden. So it's really cool that they mentioned that one specifically.
Nice.
Uh, yeah, yeah, it's the second song off of Killers, and it's just yeah, it actually was one of the songs that really was like, holy shit, like give me more of this band. Yeah. And I was talking about that like quick vetting process and I just saw that I've never met Halloweeny Nunya before
Yeah.
and saw them join and went over and checked out the profile real fast and gave them a follow because they look like a really cool and chill person. And you know, I I do that a lot. I try to find I try to find those folks on CannaBuzz that are just going to want to chill, have fun, and be kind and enjoy each other without making people feel like they don't belong.
Right.
Like the only time I feel like I there are folks that don't belong are the folks that are trying to like cause harm to someone. Like there's enough of that on if I want to cause harm on social media, I can go to Facebook and I can go to TikTok and Instagram and I can go to other things. But like this is probably the kindest app. Not in more than one sense, obviously. But this is a place for where people want to go to like be kind to each other and
Yeah.
learn from and chill with each other. And like
Appreciate that a lot. We really do.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you guys, this is something that you two cultivated. I mean, and have and you guys cultivated this atmosphere and stood by it to the point where when there have been folks who have come in and disrupted just the chill environment, both of you have been very quick to be like, this isn't what this app is about. Take this to another app. Take this to another place. Post your weed shit here and move along if you have other shit to say. And like the community was built around the two of you and very specifically. And I mean, I've I know I personally have spoken more to Sam than to JR, but I've said to both of you how much I personally appreciate this app, what you have given to this community and what you have given to all of us. And it isn't just because of you guys putting up an app and making it about weed, because there's plenty of them. There's plenty of them. You know, I'm on several of them, and you know what? There's no one else is. You know, no one uses those apps. No one uses them with any regularity. No one uses them in you know, long term, and it's because none of them have a community. None of them have the community that you two built. And it is by actively being a part of it and actively filtering, not in a sense of restricting what people are doing and saying, but in the sense of restricting that harm side of it. You know, the folks that are here to disrupt and cause harm. You guys have never played around with that, and I've always admired that. And again, it built the community that we have. And you know, between the growers and the social smokers and the medical smokers, and you guys have really created this community where all of those people come together and learn from each other about weed. So yeah,
And
I'll
I like that aspect of it. I mean, the idea that that our community is it's not like we force people into saying what we want people to say. We allow people to be free with what they want to say as long as they're not harming others. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, you know, it's just silly weed posts, but those silly weed posts make a lot of people happy and a lot of people smile. You know, I get a lot of joy
yeah,
in my day when I scroll through. I mean, I'm
yeah,
passing on memes and stuff like that. It's really has turned into a great community, and we've had to sacrifice numbers, I guess you would say, in order to keep the community the way we want the community to be. Um,
yeah.
if you don't have love in your heart and you're not here for the right reason, we would respectfully ask that you leave.
Well, you know, a big part of it is a big part of the community is the people that are a part of it, right? And the people that contribute a lot to it. And that's why we wanted to highlight you, Weed Wizard. And we'll be, you know, be bringing others on to these sorts of streams as well in the future. So this isn't like one and done or whatever. But, you
Absolutely.
know, but Weed Wizard came to mind because he's so active in the community, and you've been doing this for a while, and you do contribute to part of that atmosphere and that vibe that we're trying to create. In terms of how prolific you are, one of the other things that comes to mind when I think about you is just you are a prolific content creator. You're always posting stuff. You're posting to CannaBuzz, but I also follow you on TikTok, and I see all kinds of videos when I log in to open up TikTok. I see all kinds of videos from, whether, you know, could be weed related, but it also could be Warhammer related. It could be, you know, something else. So just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's funny because there's one of those many TikTok trends that I haven't participated in but kept thinking about is the whole, like, if you want to do anything on TikTok, you need to have a niche, and I don't. You know, I do kind of tie everything back to weed, but you can't really do that on TikTok. And I've had enough videos blocked on TikTok that I'm like, okay, I don't need to do weed content, you know? So every now and then, if there's something like a big political announcement, right? A big legalization announcement or something like that, that I know is a safe thing to post, it's not going to get banned, then maybe I'll do that on TikTok. I will post stuff like that. I post a lot of, in fact, the one place where I'm maybe even more active with weed than CannaBuzz sometimes is Facebook, in like an activism standpoint, where that's where I post the stuff that is about, you know, the fight for legalization, the Supreme Court knocking down, or not taking up the case on medical cannabis for workers' comp, which is something that directly affects me, and it's actually something that I have plenty I could say about the Supreme Court, but this is one that I actually understand why they can't take it up while legislation is as fucked as it is. But it does mean that people like me who are on workers' comp, who could go to CVS and who could call my doctor and get a prescription, go to CVS and get all the Percocet I want for free. But instead, I choose to manage my pain with something that's not going to kill me. So I have to pay $500 a month to manage my pain. It's not as bad now. After the surgery, I've been able to cut back a little bit, and my intake has changed. But you know, at least $300 to $400 a month just to manage pain that I could do for free if I was willing to kill myself doing it.
Are you in a prohibition state?
I'm in a medical state, so I do have my medical card, and so that's the whole argument that is currently like shot down in I think it's Minnesota, that somebody sued the state that they're a medical cannabis patient, sued for workers' comp to cover the expenses, and it got shut down because it's not federally legal. And so as long as it's a Schedule 1 drug, then they can't, the states, even though it's legal, it's illegal. And you know, it's the whole federal level thing that the Supreme Court can't step in. And so, and of course, most courts are going to side with where the money goes eventually anyway, which is with the or with the workers' comp companies and the insurance companies that don't want to pay, you know, thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars more for medicine.
Does your state allow you, or does your medical card allow you to grow?
No, no, we can't grow here. And the second we can, I will. Um, I've been wanting to for forever, and I just haven't really been comfortable doing it. Where I am in the neighborhood I could probably get away with it, but it's not necessarily something I want to try to get away with, you know,
Right, right.
when I don't really need to.
So, what's the attitude of your local law enforcement? Because a lot of times the laws that we really need to pay attention to are the ones that they enforce. And so, what's your local attitude for your local law enforcement?
So I'm in Philly, where most weed offenses are thrown out of court. They to While I am within county lines where I live, and again, I don't think they'd be as lenient with growing as they would with you know, possession or anything else. But like anything under an ounce, I think it is in Philadelphia County, most you're going to get is $100 ticket. Like that's if there is a cop in a mood, they might give you $100 ticket. But um, once you leave county lines, most of the rest of the state, it is I need to have my medicine in the original package with the label with my name on it, or I'm breaking the law. So
Wow.
like, yeah, if I so when I leave the house, I can take a pen with me, but I
Yeah.
need to have it in this package. Once I take it out and my name is no longer on it,
Yeah.
now I'm breaking the law.
See,
And
a lot of people don't realize that just because our states go legal doesn't mean that we don't still have things to fight for. There's a
yeah,
lot of rules and regulations and BS legislation that is designed to, in my opinion, fuck us. So I think it's really important that we, talk to people like you, find out what your story is, find out where you live, and start helping people connect and communicate with each other so that we can start getting some of this stuff turned around.
yeah. And as of right now, because of just the fight here in Pennsylvania, there's finally there's finally legislation with legs on legalization on adult use legalization, which I will say the legislation we're going to end up getting is going to be bullshit legislation that is just going to be good for the corporations and the big huge weed companies that are already out there, and they're the plan right now is the bill right now would basically be tax the weed companies and give all of that money to law enforcement instead of investing in education, instead of investing in healthcare, instead of investing in our veterans and the people who could really benefit from this money. They want to put it into law enforcement, which they're easing the burden of law enforcement by making something legal. So I don't know why but that's the Pennsylvania bill, and
Yeah.
that's the probably the first thing that we're going to get. There's also an amendment to the current medical bill that is going through the Senate that looks like it might finally give us home grow. And the only reason that they're finally considering it is because they're finally realizing that there are people in Pennsylvania that have to drive 2.5 hours to get to a dispensary to get their medicine. Like how like and when you're like how are you doing that? How are you getting 2.5 hours away? How are you managing that? I know I need my medicine. I need to buy more medicine every other week. So I can't imagine a 5 hour drive every other week just to get something that I need. And I don't necessarily need this to live. I need it to live comfortably. I need it for a better quality of life. But I could be in pain and not use cannabis. I can't imagine there are people that will literally die if they don't have their medicine. So how are we keeping it from them? And I think that light bulb has finally clicked in some of it, and especially because those patients are the rural patients, and the rural constituency is what really controls the Pennsylvania legislature. So I think that's where that needle is finally going to move. But we don't even know if that, even that is it's the most progress we've had, and even that's a crapshoot. Even that's a
Well, we have a wave right now that's kind of building, and the people of this country are starting to know people who truly benefit from cannabis. And as that wave builds momentum, it's going to come crashing down on prohibition. And I hope that it, spreads across the land and happens sooner than later because it's been way too long. And it's bullshit because back in the early 1900s, a good bulk of the medicines that were available to people had cannabis in it for a
oh
lot of
yeah,
things.
oh yeah,
So we
it was
need to
over the
like
counter.
someone mentioned in the chat that Colorado has been legal for so long, but still doctors and mental health professionals have a limited knowledge. And
Yeah,
that to me
Tara.
is baffling, is how the medical community can be so ignorant at this point. When you go and talk to your doctor, they almost don't, they won't, most of them won't even talk to you about it, if at all. And if they do, their knowledge is very limited, and it's sad.
Well, yeah, and to that point, when I was before weed was medically legal in Pennsylvania, but a little, maybe like a year or two before it went legal, I was talking to a doctor, and my back was at the time my back would flare up. It used to be like once a year, every other year, I'd have a really bad flare up. My back would be terrible. I'd be down for a week. I'd be hobbling another week. I'd be fine after that. And then it was about three or 4 years ago, I got injured at work. It went out of whack. It never righted itself again. But in back years ago, when I would just treat it every now and then when it would flare up, I said to a doctor, I don't like how opioids make me feel. I I've done the Advil thing over and over, and it tears my stomach apart at this point. But lately, I've been trying I've been using cannabis, and it's been helping. And her response was, "I'm worried about you using cannabis because I think that there's too high a chance of addiction. So I'm going to prescribe you these low dose opioids that are non-addictive," which I don't know how many folks out there have seen the show Dope Sick, but I cried when I watched that and heard them give the exact same speech to the doctors and the patients that end up dying because they get hooked on fucking Oxycontin and not necessarily dying, but lives getting ruined. And I was given this speech. I was given the speech by a doctor that I should take opioids instead of taking cannabis. And I switched doctors and ended up I ended up going back to that practice for a little while and received the same pushback with different doctors in that practice. And then I was like, forget it. I switched doctors, and I found a doctor who prescribed it. And she actually ended up not prescribing it to me yet because we were working out other health things. But the whole thing was, I want somebody who is going to recognize what I'm doing as medical treatment. And I won't go to a doctor who's not going to hear me on that. Like,
I had a
yeah.
similar experience. I had a very similar experience.
Yeah.
So,
And
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
oh no, I just want, like, what Tara had said about the doctors just not being aware and not being prepared, and she's spot on. Hi, Tara.
Yeah, shout outs to Tara, Miss Cadabra just joined a little bit ago, Dr. Strains, Kells,
Miss
Kendall.
Cadabra asked about dispos in Pennsylvania, and honestly, I can't give you a number. Kells would probably, if she didn't already answer before me, Kells would have a better idea of how many dispos there are in Pennsylvania. I know that when I'm here at home, I can throw a rock and hit a dispensary, and it's not that, I don't have to drive more than 10 minutes to get to a dispo. And if I'm willing to drive for a half hour, I can probably get to 15 different dispensaries, maybe more. I know that when I go visit Lock Haven, I have to drive an hour to get to a dispensary. So, like, the more rural you get, the more infrequent they get. And you get to, like, places like Penn State where they just got like a second or third one. But, like, that's the other thing, is that here in Philadelphia, I have the luxury of going to any dispensary that I want to, like I said, within a hour radius. Like, it doesn't, and they all have to compete with each other. They all have sales. They all have, stuff like that. But out in central Pennsylvania, there's, you'll have one dispensary, and that's it for miles.
So I've got a fun question for you, Weed Wizard, Mr. Wizard. If you could go to any concert, yeah, if you could go to any concert, could be like any band from past or present, and then you could smoke any strain like before and during the show, what would that pairing be?
I mean, The one show that really comes to mind, a very specific, would be watching the Beatles perform on the rooftop of Abbey Road Studio. And for that, I would want something that would just have me kind of locked in, like Shangri-La, something that would give me like a little bit of a pep, but also just get me like locked in and just absorbing every moment of that. So yeah, Shangri-La, I think would be, and I haven't had that in 2 years, maybe. I haven't been able to find it in forever, but man, that's just one of those, you just feel great and you just are zoned in on whatever it is you're trying to experience. So like, yeah. And the Beatles, it's one of those things that it's one of those experiences that we'll never get, like we'll never have that. I saw Paul, and Paul was amazing, and I'm not even a big Paul fan, but Paul was fucking amazing. um but just to watch them get hauled off the rooftop of Abbey Road Studio, I think would have been one of the most amazing experiences. Like, I've you never hear from the people that were there. I don't, unless they found any of them in the Peter Jackson thing, which I never finished. But
It's super long. Yeah, it's
yeah,
but
I watched
but
the
it's
first
cool.
episode. Yeah, yeah.
Well, if anyone on the chat has any questions for the Weed Wizard, please let us know. Post them in the chat. I was also going to ask you another kind of get to know you question. What's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie and my favorite book are The Princess Bride. Um, it's one of those, I can quote every line from it. The characters in it are are witty. It's the dialogue is impeccable, and it's one of those movies. The screenplay for the movie was written by the author of the book, so you also get just a direct translation of what was going on in his mind onto the paper, and then into the hands of Carl Reitman. No, yeah, Carl Reitman, right? Meathead, uh, who then just turns it into this absolute masterpiece. Um, Casting is impeccable. Everything about it is just there's no dull moment, and it doesn't miss a beat. And so that's one of those movies that there's a handful of movies that I could watch a million times and never get sick of, but that's the top of the list. Star Wars is up there. The Other Guys with Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg, that movie is on up toward the top of my list. But yeah, Princess Bride has been number one novel and movie for years.
So how old were you when you discovered heavy metal music?
So that's actually a two-part answer, right? Um, when I was in high school, I was in ninth grade, and I was the weird ADHD kid, um, and we ended up going to a Catholic school for a year. I was getting bullied in middle school. Went to a Catholic school for a year, and things didn't get any better in that department. But I ended up becoming friends with this guy named Dave Tyson, and he was another one of those misfit kind of people. Only he was much more of a fuck it, fuck all of these people. He was the first atheist I ever met, and he was into metal, and he just one day he was like he we were on a train ride, and he gave me Master of Puppets, and he ended up buying me for my birthday that year the first four Metallica albums: Master of Puppets, Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All. and I just absorbed those, especially Master of Puppets. I listened to that over and over again. And he was also big into Slayer, and this was early 90s. So from there I got into Megadeth, and I got into I got into Megadeth, I got into Slayer, I got into um a little bit into Ozzy at the time, a little bit of Pantera at the time, but started getting into metal. But then I'd start listening to something else, and this guy and many people in the metal, many of the metal folks would be like, no, but you can't listen to that too. And it's like, oh, but Guns N' Roses, oh no, you don't want to listen to that. I'm like, no, I love that. Like, oh, the Guns N' Roses are posers, but these guys are great. And then these guys are posers, and these guys are great. And I'm like, but wait, I like all of. Why can't I like all of this? I want to like all of it. And,
I agree.
And so it got to a point where that sort of gatekeeping got to a point where I was like, well, then I'm just going to listen to the stuff I'm allowed to listen to. And it just felt like.
Did you draw the line at Bon Jovi though?
My line was always Def Leppard. I always drew my line at Def Leppard. I've always said Def Leppard couldn't take a hint from God, because like the drummer
got a new album out.
Yeah, I know. They just released a new album. The drummer loses their arm. It's the only instrument that requires all 4 fucking limbs. So, but they're like, no, he's fine. He's fine. We're good. And to be fair, they're fine. I don't have the hate that I used to, but then their guitarist died, like drowned in his own vomit and died, and then they replaced him. And it's just. Yeah, they're sort of a tragic band, but they were always the band that I was like, no, but I get it with them. Like, no, but I hate them. And Kiss. I always had a hang up with Kiss. Every now and then I'll hear a Kiss song and I'll be like, I'm mad that this is Kiss because I kind of dig it. But I've always also kind of been like that with Kiss. So I kind of got out of metal, and I would hear metal things and like different heavy music and be into it, and occasionally would pick something up, but I got much more into like the alternative rock and hard rock of the 90s, and I followed more the grunge route of metal too, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, and then that really led me into the more like optimistic, happy, upbeat shit of like the late 90s, early 2000s, before like things really started to go to shit. And like, and so like that really led my influence for a while. And then, I like I said, I drifted away from metal. And then in 2020, I saw a video of Iron Maiden playing Phantom of the Opera. And the intro of the video is Bruce Dickinson talking about how he was a fan standing in the audience watching this amazing band play. And now here he is invited to be in the band, and he gets to sing this song that blew him away. And I hear it. It's Phantom of the Opera, and it blows me away. I'm just floored by it. And I was like, I should give these guys a real shot. My only other real introduction to them was when I was like 9. A neighbor tried to introduce me to them, and my brother was like, oh, no, they're just gimmicky metalheads, whatever. And I was like, oh, I guess they're not good. And, my brother was my idol, so I just listened. So one day I get into the car in 2020, like it was like September 2020, I get into the car and I put on the first Iron Maiden album, and it just completely blows me away. And for the next couple weeks, I just listen album by album. And when I have a chance, I'll just sit down. And I was so blown away that after the first 4 albums, they did a live album. And I looked up the live. After their first 5 albums, then they did a live album. And I went and looked it up and watched it, and was just, again, like their showmanship and their energy and shit. It just got me so enthralled with them. and it just took me through their catalog, and I just absolutely loved it. But then when I was finished listening through their catalog, and I built a whole playlist of all my favorite songs, and I was like, well, shit, what's next? And someone suggested Dio. So I was like, all right, Dio it is. Listen through all of Dio. Listen through all of Priest. Listen to all of Motorhead. And then went on to, I've UFO, Exodus, Testament. And some of those I haven't gone through the whole catalog, but then some of them it's just like, I pop this album on and listen to it. Or I pop this band on. The Scorpions was another one that I got way into early on. Halloween.
Did you get into Black Sabbath through Dio or through Ozzy?
Ozzy. What's funny about Black Sabbath with me is that when I was in high school, Black Sabbath was kind of the has-been wash-up band, because like by this point, by when I was getting into metal the first time, Ozzy dropped Hellraiser, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
Speak of the Devil. He did Speak of the Devil, where he did all those Black Sabbath songs with his new band, and that's one of my favorite Black Ozzy records of all time. Is Speak of the Devil.
Yeah. He's amazing. And yeah, that Hellraiser album was just hit so hard. And Black Sabbath, by then Dio was gone. By then they were on to like they were past Glenn Hughes. They were on to Tony Martin by then, I guess. And nobody and the whole thing was like they peaked with Ozzy. I never really, because Ozzy was so hot then I learned more about Ozzy and listened to him much more. The only Black Sabbath album that I ever listened to before I got back into metal and listened through their whole catalog, but before I got back into metal, the only album I listened to was Paranoid the whole way through.
Same.
And now, granted, it's probably their absolute best album. They have other amazing albums, but Paranoid's probably the best one. It's probably the easy answer, but I think it's also the only right answer. Sabotage is fantastic, but a little lazy at times, I feel like, which is, on Ozzy's end, which is right before he goes. But it also has, I think that has Symptom of the Universe, which is one of my favorite moments in Ozzy's catalog. When you hear him at the end just belt out at the end of Symptom of the Universe, it's amazing.
So we had a few questions come in through the chat. Old Soul Stoner has asked a couple times, will you ever listen to Bootsy? So,
oh God,
is he trying to bring a little funk to your life?
He is, and I'm wrong for not listening to Bootsy because I really want to, and like as a bass player, as somebody who's started learning bass around the time I got into Iron Maiden, and then I was like, I need to buy a bass, and I started learning the bass. But yeah, I do want to, because I do every time I listen to funk music, I get into it. It's also one of those things that I don't think to listen to it. I don't think to listen to it because I just go to what I always go to, which, I need to get into the car and think, what should I listen to? And then pop on Bootsy is what I need to do. Because Old Smoker also is always on me about listening to music to different bands. It's Old Soul Stoner and Old Smoker. The old heads are always on me about listening to stuff, and I'm so bad at doing it because I'm so bad at just sitting down and putting on music. So putting on things that I'm not thinking of,
Yeah. Dr. Strains asked, do you like Static X?
I feel like I've heard a few Static X songs. That the name sounds familiar. I believe I added something of theirs to the Morning Metal playlist at one point because it came up in like new metal stuff. Like every now and then on Spotify, I go through like the new metal stuff. So I feel like I've heard some stuff, but I don't think that if I was blindfolded and it was put on that I would necessarily recognize it, if that makes sense. Whatever it is that I heard, I feel like there is a song of theirs that I liked enough to add to the morning metal playlist. We're going to find out right now.
How did you feel about System of a Down?
I really like System of a Down a lot. My Jay, RQ's dad, is the one that got me into System of a Down. Because System of a Down, Slipknot, those bands were coming up as I was pretty much out of listening to metal back in my early 20s. And that was really also like that was the metal that the kids were listening to. You know, like it was like, oh, I'm too old for this music. And then when Jay was like, oh no, you gotta check them out.
Yeah.
System of a Down, every song takes you on a journey. And I talk about this on Morning Metal, about the song that takes you on a journey with different rhythms or different time signatures or different changes that take you from one place to another. And Iron Maiden will have a 7-minute song that'll feel like several 3-minute songs with all of these changes. Or System of a Down will do that same effect in like 2.5 minutes. I really love their songwriting approach. I really love their tones and like the heaviness of that they hit with. My oldest has actually started a record collection, and they just they have most of System's or they have, I guess, 3 System albums right now. So they are also getting into them with us too. One second.
I was really into Hypnotize and Mesmerize, like when those came out.
Yeah, we actually just listened to Mesmerize the other day.
Yeah, like around when that must have been what, like 2003 or 4 or something like that when those came out. I can't remember, but they toured with the Mars Volta for that tour, and so I got to go with, like, I worked at a guitar store, and the owner of the store took like the whole store out to go see System of a Down and the Mars Volta, so that was pretty cool.
Tight.
Yeah,
that's very cool.
Let's see. We got Kendall had some love for System of a Down in the chat. He also had a question. Kendall did. He asked, "How did you become a teacher?"
When I when I was in 2nd grade, I was watching my teacher, and I said, "That's what I'm going to do when I grow up." And that's like the start of it. That was Mr. McCartney, 2nd grade. And then when I was in 7th grade, Mrs. Strykowski, was the one who made me say, yeah, I'm going to teach like middle or high school. I'm going to teach like middle school, I think. And then in high school, it was my English teacher that made me realize that it was like, I wanted to teach theater. By the time I graduated high school, it was like I wanted to do theater. And he was like, well, they don't, at the time, there was no like teach theater in Pennsylvania. It was you become an English teacher and then you teach theater. So I became an English teacher to teach theater and fell in love with English in college. I fell in love with grammar and analyzing literature and then just doing that, with students. There's a big part of me that had I done it, had I don't know, lived a slightly different experience, I would have been a history teacher instead. I hated history all throughout high school. And when I was student teaching my second senior year in college, I was observing another teacher, and I observed the history teacher, and she put on the most mesmerizing lesson and made it so relevant to the kids and so interesting and so involved that every student in the room was just engaged and participating. And I never saw history come alive like that. And I've often thought that actually got me interested in history. And like I've learned, not that I'm, have a history degree, but I've learned a lot and thought about getting this social studies certificate just to go back and teach history. It's also more marketable. Nobody needs English teachers most of the time because everyone's an English teacher.
Yeah,
Because
I loved that. I loved history class, and I there was a history teacher that stood out for me in high school. That just, yeah, for what I can't remember exactly what he did, but it's just cool. It's cool when you have those teachers that stand out and really kind of make that
yeah,
difference for their students.
yeah, and it was that was the teacher that I went on to become. And like I'm not somebody to really like. I don't know. I don't always like to talk about myself in this kind of way, but I was good at what I did, you know. Up until the day I got hurt. When I got hurt and when I left and I couldn't come back, the you know, I what I was really really good at wasn't wasn't grading, wasn't paperwork, wasn't always necessarily the delivering the information to the kids, but it was making connections with kids and letting kids know that they were human beings and that they were people, that I was just there to help them be smarter, more knowledgeable people that would be able to understand the world around them better if they could read better and interpret better. And like but like ultimately it was all about making connections with kids that I was really good at doing, you know. Um and and students, and like kids isn't even the right word. I actually try very hard to make it a point to not call my students kids because it's dehumanizing, because it is because it is a you aren't a full person yet. You're just a kid. And that's how we treat kids in school, that they're not full people yet, but they are. They are full people, and that's that want to make decisions and want to know stuff. And so, I was really good at working with those kids, working with students,
Definitely, Jr. is working with cats. Um, so in the chat, if you any of you guys have any questions, throw them out there. Shout out to Stoner Guy 420, Kendall, Gringo Mike just joined a little bit ago, Old Soul Stoner, the Ugly Farmer, a bunch of people, Solo of course hanging out,
So,
always holding it
thanks
down.
for chilling with us. And
Yeah, what was that meetup that Mac and Solo and Kells, that didn't they get to all get together or something like that? Did I see a
yeah,
post about that?
they were up. They were right nearby too. But it was one of those. There was I think it was like a little dab festival or something like that. I was so bummed because it was one of those things where I had done so much the day before and then so much already that morning. And when I do that, then once my back starts seizing up, or as I usually say, is once my check engine light comes on, I pretty much am on the couch, and that's it for the rest of the night.
No, I do know that. Know that well. I have a I'm a below the knee amputee, and I have a neuropathy. I have Morton's neuromas that grow on the end of my severed nerves, and
Oh wow.
so I'm in a similar situation. When it's downtime, I could be anywhere, and I gotta be down. You know what I mean?
Yep. 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 And sometimes, when I'm out in public, right, and I'm out and I'm walking around, if I sit for 5 minutes, I can regroup enough, I can rally, I can get up and make it another 20 minutes. But then I need to get to the car and I need to get home. But like, but yeah, it's like I'm on borrowed time. Once that check engine light comes on, it's like there are times like I'll be in a mall and I'll start scouting out where the benches are and start looking where the nearest place to sit. Where I can lean up against something, where I can, I always have to know. I played my first show back since the pandemic, and I played at World Cafe Live, which is actually a really nice venue here in the city. And I had to ask, is there a couch backstage? Because and luckily there was, because halfway I was first on, but I wanted to stay and watch my friend's band, so I was able to just lay down in the back for a little while and regroup. But like, I need to always spot those things out, because like you said, once it's done, nope, it's done.
Gringo Mike in the chat said, "Applaud you, sir, for taking more of a nurtured learning angle. Teachers have such an impact on youth."
Really appreciate that, Gringo Mike. I really appreciate that. Yeah, we've all had that teacher that we're like, oh man, that teacher, yes, that was the one, that was the guy, that was the woman, that was the person that just absolutely, that's the teacher that that made me want to go to school every day. That teacher is the one that made me like, yeah, it's worth going so I could see that teacher. We've all had that teacher, and we've all had that teacher that we made us want to stay home, that we never wanted to go to school, that we hated looking in their fucking disgusting face every day. We've had both of those teachers, and every single one of us. And then we've had the ones in the middle that try really hard, but it's like, come on, tone it down a notch. And the ones that are, that don't try at all, and you're like, all right, fine, I'll just sit in your class and coast through, but like, you can get your fucking paycheck. And like, all of those teachers still exist. I've worked with all of them. I know them, and you know what? All of them tend to be pretty good people, despite them being varying levels of, whatever they are. But at the end of the day, it's like it's those teachers that make kids want to go to school versus those teachers that make kids feel like school is a punishment.
Right.
And like, I always really liked the show Boy Meets World, because teachers are always represented fairly. They're represented as human beings and not antagonists. And sometimes they're the antagonist, but sometimes they're not. And and even when they're the antagonist, they might be right. Versus those other shows that you watch growing up, that it's like the teachers are the enemies and the bad guys, and we should try to pull one over on these mean teachers. But like, teachers shouldn't just be fucking mean, and so we've all had those teachers, and so while I had Mrs. Strykowski and Mr. McCartney and Mr. Harris and Mr. Stewart, I also had the other Mr. McCartney, no relation, but my sixth grade teacher, who told students, if you don't knock it off, you're going to go sit next to Steve. Like, what the fuck am I even doing? Why am I a fucking punishment in your classroom, asshole?
That's fucked up.
Like, yeah. And so like, I had Mrs. Holmes, Ms. Holmes, who I hated. I hated her when I was in 10th grade. I hated her slightly less in 11th grade. And I told my best friend's mom at the time, one of my high school friends who was a teacher there. I was like, yeah, she's the worst. She's the devil. I hate her. And she's like, she's the sweetest lady in the world. What are you talking about? She's so nice. I'm like, no, she is the Antichrist. What are you talking about? So flash forward 10 years, and I'm a substitute teacher in my old high school, and I see Mrs. Holmes, and I'm like, oh, But I walk up to her, I'm like, hey, do you know if Mrs. Hughes is here? Because I'm friends with her son. I went to school here. I had you in 10th grade. And she was like, oh, come on in. Do you want some coffee? Let me go clean a cup for you. She was the sweetest fucking lady in the world. And I was like, what happened to you? How did you change? What, like, I didn't say this. This is in my head of like, who is this person? So the bells are ringing in the next class I'm substituting in. And two of the kids are talking and they're like, oh, yeah, I've got to go to Holmes's class. Oh, I fucking hate her. And blah. And I was like, so no, she's still terrible. And it's funny because I've known that, like I've said, the teacher next door to me, my first 4 years teaching, babysat my oldest kid and was a good friend of mine and was a mentor to me at times. The kids fucking hated her, but she was one of the nicest people in the world that I knew down there. So like, you know, but you know, it always turns out to be like I know who I know the teacher I always wanted to be, and that's the teacher I always was. Even when I got in trouble for it, you know.
So we're coming up on an hour. We've been live tonight, which has been awesome. We've got a decent amount of people that have been watching us tonight, which has been cool. We've never done.
Appreciate everyone chiming in. It's great to see folks that I've hung out with before. Did I burn my again? I do need to wrap things up here on my end.
Cool.
But I do really appreciate the opportunity and the hangout and the session. And it is great to hang out with both of you. This is my first time really getting to hang out with JR too. So I really appreciate seeing you face to face and talking to you.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah. Good times. Good times.
Well, thanks for joining us tonight, Steve, and thanks to everyone that's been watching. We'll be doing more of these in the future, so stay tuned for more of these over the next, several months and weeks to come. So, thanks, Steve. Thank you, JR.
Absolutely.
Thanks to everyone in the live chat. It's been awesome to have you all in the chat tonight on this Saturday night. Maybe we'll have to do another Saturday night one again too. It seems to be a good time.
That's fun.
Yeah. Well, thanks guys. I hope you all have a great night, a great evening, a great rest of your weekend, and we'll speak to you again soon. Thanks guys.
Bro's love.